The first question that I would have about polygraphing is, does this really work?
In most states, you cannot become a police officer without passing a polygraph. You can't join any federal law enforcement agency without passing a polygraph. It's the best truth-telling tool that's out there. If someone comes up with a better one someday, we'll all change to it.
How does it work?
It works by looking at microscopic changes to blood, sweat, and breathing as yes or no questions are answered in a specific pattern.
So it's basically relying on the person to be nervous or anxious or something like that.
Well, all people are nervous taking a polygraph. That's why we surround the questions of importance, whether it be cheating in their relationship or theft at their work, with questions we know they're telling the truth. So the computer has an example of what their body does at this moment when they're sitting there mad, nervous, and upset, but they are truly telling the truth.
Or I guess how accurate would it be? If I told 100 lies, it's going to catch all 100, or it's going to catch like 95 of them? Like what kind
Well,
of...
a polygraph is limited to 4 questions maximum. We did more than that, it would be unfocused. So that's part of why we can't use a 100-question analogy.
How come now? Why is it limited to 4?
Well, all of our polygraph structure comes from the Federal Polygraph Academy that's used your tax dollars for the last 50 years to study polygraph and try new things and modify things. And they found the longest a test should be is a 10-question script with 20 seconds in between each question, which then totals 4 minutes to get through one through to the end of the other. And by then, that's when your arm's starting to hurt a little from the blood pressure cuff, and maybe you're starting to think about the pain instead of the questions you're being asked.
Does it become inaccurate after a certain amount of time?
Well, if they're no longer focusing on the questions, then yes.
If you're doing a polygraph test, when do you kind of get to the getting, so to speak? When would you say like, okay, did you do it?
Is today Monday? No. 20 seconds later. Is today Wednesday? Yes. 20 seconds later. Do you know who took the money? No. 20 seconds later. Is today Friday? No. 20 seconds later. Did you take the money?
Wow.
Now we're halfway through the 10-question script.
Man, it's that fast, huh?
No, there's 20 seconds in between each to let the body calm down from one before we hit you with another.
I guess my interpretation of it was like you're in there for hours with somebody just banging away at tons
Well,
and tons.
when somebody says the test is going to take an hour or two, it's 3 parts. The pre-test is where we explain the equipment and help you develop your 1 to 4 questions. The next part, the test, is only 3 4-minute chart collections. It's fairly fast. And then the third part, post-test, is discussing the results.
Now, how much of this is kind of up to your interpretation as the examiner? Are you kind of reading tea leaves, so to speak, or is this black and white, yes or no?
No, most computer polygraphs come with computer scoring that takes that power away from you of being too easy or too hard on somebody.
So the computer scoring, like how does that work?
It's comparing your blood, sweat, and breathing on something we know you're telling the truth to what your blood, sweat, and breathing did on the important question and also on a third type of question.
What's the third type of question?
It's what's called a C question, and it's really too involved for this. In fact, it takes a week of a polygraph school to study that third question.
Now, here's the problem. Now I'm so interested in what the third question, like, can you give me an example of what a third question would be?
Well, if I'm here because you're accused of stealing money at your employer, and the employer wanted to write 4 questions, they might be, do you know who took the money? Did you take the money? Do you know where the missing money is now? Did you help anybody take the money? That C question might also be a theft question, but from a different time in your life. It might be, prior to working here, did you ever steal any money from someone who trusted you? And the Federal Polygraph Academy, in all the money and time they spent, has found that that's a good question to ask as a third type of question during a test.
Now, will these results Do they generally hold up in court?
Well, I do them for immigration court, which is federal. That's where most court ones are used, in federal court, because the US government is the biggest users of polygraph in the world. A lot of people don't know. A lot of people are getting their immigration thanks to passing a polygraph test.
I didn't know that at all. Wow. Is there any examples of a major crime, felony, murder, etc., in which somebody has been convicted solely off a polygraph test?
Well, New Mexico, for example, they allow polygraph as evidence, the same as any other evidence, with no special procedure. Other states, you either need both sides to agree before the test or have the judge override it.
When you kind of score somebody based on whether or not they're telling the truth, it's a probability, like there's a 90% chance that they're lying or 10% chance that they're lying, or how does that work?
There's two levels of accuracy with a polygraph. The first is the blood, sweat, and breathing is 4 devices attached to you. That's pretty much 100% because it's just medical equipment truly reading your blood, sweat, and breathing changes. Then the other level of accuracy is when we take the results and make a call, pass or fail. And that's held to be over 90% accurate. Wow. And the way they get the 90% to 95% is through later other evidence appearing or confessions. They match it to what the polygraph said, and 9.5 out of 10 times the polygraph had the correct answer.
Is this, would you say, like looking at it in terms of court cases, is this growing in its acceptance, about level, or declining in its acceptance and use?
Usually in communities where you can't become a police officer without passing one, those are the areas where most judges allow them in court. If it's important enough of a tool to let somebody become a cop based on that, then it certainly should be usable for evidence. And polygraph, even if it was only 90% accurate, they allow other evidence in, like eyewitness testimony. You say it was a purple car, I say it was a brown car, yet that's allowed in as evidence. And that's eyewitness testimony is wrong 50% of the time.
I feel like I'm going to do a really bad job framing this question. So I'm going to hope that you kind of understand what I mean by this. But can it pick up on, say, lies of omission, in the sense that, like, did you eat the sandwich? And no, I didn't eat the whole sandwich, but I ate 70% of it. Can it pick that kind of stuff up?
That's why we have to be very accurate on the questions. They need to be yes or no answerable. 3 to 19 words seems to be the best, and no ands, ors, or commas. So for example, I might ask you, did you kill that man? And you're thinking, I didn't kill him. The bullet I shot at him killed him. So that's why we asked, did you shoot the man? Or did you shoot the gun that shot the man?
You've done this before. That makes a lot of sense. Now, but let's say that you had somebody that wasn't as experienced in yourself, and they didn't frame that question correctly, like the way that you framed it. Would it still pick up that somebody was kind of committing a lie of omission? That, like, I didn't kill the guy, I just pulled the trigger and the bullet did it. If somebody who wasn't as experienced as yourself asked a question in that way, would the system still be able to tell that they were lying?
Well, the reason it's called a lie detector and not a truth detector, an example is, there's a homeless guy that lives downstairs from my office, and he tells people, I am Jesus Christ. If we were to do a test on him, he wouldn't fail. He is not lying. Now, we're not saying he's Jesus Christ. We're saying he's not lying. He truly believes it to be true.
So could somebody who, let's use the dramatic example, killed someone, if they just absolutely believe that they didn't do it, even if there was like video evidence that clearly shows them they did it, if they didn't believe it, can they pass the test?
Yes, it's not something they can train themselves to do. If they were so drunk or blacked out and really don't remember it, they will pass. But if they try playing games, no, it will catch them. Their sweat at their fingers will go up dramatically, and we'll call it a lie.
It couldn't just be one of these things that I sat in a room before I took this and just convinced myself over and over and over again, even though if there was any internal thought in my mind that I had done it, I would probably get caught by the system.
If you know you're lying, you'll fail. In fact, one of the questions on a final exam at most polygraph academies are, can a sociopath or a psychopath be tested? And the correct answer is, if they know they're lying, they will fail.
Are you ready for some harder slash listener submitted questions?
Sure.
So the big one obviously is going to be, can people fake it?
No, back in the old days until the 1990s, computerized polygraphs didn't exist. It was a roll of chart paper with 4 moving pens. And it was a struggle, and it took hours back then because we had to write furiously as a chart paper was moving. And when it was done, we had to use rulers to make measurements. Then with computerized, no more ink or paper problems. It's amplified, and it's even got scoring software that sees things better than our own eyes did. So there's no way to beat a polygraph now short of bribing an examiner. And people try that quite often.
What's the most amount somebody's ever bribed you with?
People have offered $100 to $1,000.
Did that seem like a reasonable amount for that case? Or did you feel like they should have bribed you with a lot more?
Well, we would never take a bribe, so it doesn't matter the amount. But let's say a guy, his wife found out he was cheating and she would not give him another chance. So he's got no benefit of answering the truth to her. They come in and say, Mister, I'll give you $500. Just guarantee me to pass. And we say, now we can't even test for you now that you've said that.
So I guess the lesson I would take is bribe the examiner, and then you don't have to take the test, kind of, right?
I would bet 99% of examiners wouldn't take the bribe.
Most interesting legal case you've been involved in?
Examiners do a lot of the tests you see of high profile people accused of killing their wives. And whether or not the polygraph would have been admitted in court isn't important to them. It's when they release it to the public for public relations reasons. And almost every big criminal case you've heard of, they have taken polygraphs and failed, and that's why you didn't hear about them.
Really? So basically, if like it's a big case and you don't hear about the polygraph, they probably failed.
Took one and failed.
You do a lot of these things, obviously, for court, like you mentioned, immigration court and stuff like that. But now, what kind of stuff do you do on the civil side?
On civil side, not criminal, but civil.
Or, sorry, I should have phrased that differently. Like personal stuff. Hey, is my spouse cheating on me? Nothing to do with.
Almost 90% of our work is husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, gay couples thinking the other's cheating.
How much does it cost?
Anywhere from 145 to 1,000. It's the same test whether you pay $1 or 1,000. The computer polygraph doesn't know what you charge, what you paid. So it's just whatever the examiner charges based on their other examiners in his or her area. And then some cultures are known for asking certain questions also. There are certain cultures that want to know, was I really the first guy you had sex with? Is mine really the biggest one you've ever seen? Certain cultures ask that.
I know this is kind of a broad question, but in your experience, are most people generally lying, or are most people generally telling the truth?
About 50-50. I do a lot of failed urine tests from military bases where guys and gals want to say, I did not knowingly ingest whatever chemical the urinalysis says I used. And they're ordered, go get a private polygraph, because if you don't pass one, you will be out of the service very shortly.
And that's about 50-50. Like sometimes they really didn't know.
Sometimes we fail them, and sometimes they'll say, well, I don't like your test. Okay. I'm not saying you're a liar, but I'm saying you failed a polygraph test, which usually means the same thing.
So obviously you always go by the test, but can you, after all of your experience, can you pretty much tell at this point whether somebody's lying or not before you even look at the test?
I can tell only while I'm testing them as I watch them live on the computer screen, but looking at them personally, no, I can't tell.
Yeah. Is there somebody that stands out in your mind? And obviously you don't have to name names or anything like that, but is there anybody that stands out in your mind that was like, man, that person was a good liar?
No, People that are good liars, a lot of people that are guilty are willing to take polygraphs because they think they're such a good liar they can beat a polygraph. And then we show them on the screen. After they fail a couple of times, we say, we're going to turn on a screen so you can watch yourself live. And they see what their body does on the first couple of questions, and they can see when we get to the important question what a major difference it is. Yet they thought they were in control of their body.
Some of the things that I've always heard of, like you can tell somebody's lying if they look around or if they blink a lot or anything like that. Is there any truth to that kind of stuff?
Well, there's studies that say when ask you, have you ever stolen anything since you've been an adult? While you're thinking, if your eyes go to one side, it means you're truly trying to remember, and the other side means you're trying to make up an answer.
What's the biggest lie somebody's ever told you?
It could be a lot of, we work for a lot of marijuana dispensaries. Those are all cash businesses. They can't get a bank account. Sometimes they take in 100 or 200,000 a day. An employee can take 50,000 and not even be known for a couple of days. So they'll say, no, I didn't take it. And we see they're wrong. And when we tell them they're wrong, that's when they say, well, we'll give you a big chunk of money if you say that I passed.
Best scene in a movie depicting someone taking a polygraph test?
Well, people talk about that folks movie. I can't remember the name. A guy using an antique polygraph. And that's back when people used to put a tack in their shoe to try to interfere with polygraph results.
Oh, that's one of the Ocean's movies, isn't it? It's like a gambling.
No, but there was one of those. It's Meet the Fockers.
Oh, right. Was that in any way somewhat accurate?
It's how we did it in the 80s before computerized came out.
What's the worst polygraph scene in a TV show or movie where you went, oh, that's not anywhere near accurate?
Well, we see them wiring to the fingers and putting them backwards where the moisture devices are touching their fingernails instead of their fingerprint areas, things like that.
What advice would you give to me or to anybody listening if they were about to take a polygraph test?
To do your best, you need to answer yes or no with your mouth only, no head movements or body movements. If you shake your head yes or no, it'll make your body change the same as if you had lied. So we just want the truth. We don't want you to fail due to moving. So answer with your mouth only.
That's pretty much all the questions that I have. Is there anything that you think that I missed or anything like that?
Sometimes people ask us, what if he uses drugs? Is that going to change the results? Polygraph's just a comparison test. So if they take a drug and it slows their breathing or blood, it's also going to slow it on the other questions, not just the client questions. And we're still looking to see if the client questions have a bigger reaction than the known truthful or the third type of questions. There's no drug that can help someone pass. As long as they can still walk and talk, the drug won't change anything.
How'd you get into this?
I was a regular private investigator and started getting more and more calls for it. In most counties, in most states, there's less than one polygraph examiner per county. For example, California has 58 counties. There's 10,000 private investigators, but there's only 50 private polygraph examiners.
Why is that?
So it's
Why are
just a
more
good
people doing
special. It just doesn't attract people. They make movies and TV shows about private investigators because that's exciting. They don't make them about lie detector people.
But you would think that at some point that there would just be enough of a demand that people could like, man, this is an open area. I could jump into this. How come
It is a profession that those in it try to keep others out. They tell them, oh, it's too hard to learn. Oh, it's boring. The equipment's too expensive, because they want to keep the work for themselves.
How expensive is this stuff? How expensive is equipment?
There's 4 brands of computer polygraph. It's kind of like comparing Honda, Toyota, Nissan, and maybe Kia. One's a little less known, but probably still just as good. What you get fits in a shoebox, and it costs you $4,000 to $6,000.
That's not a huge startup cost. Not in the grand scheme of things.
But the schools are 10 weeks long, and a lot of people don't have that time to put into a school. There's only 10 in the whole United States.